My name is Harold Mason, though most folks around Cedar Grove just call me Hal. I am 73 years old, and until the night my world cracked open, I thought I had figured out what it meant to live a quiet, well-earned retirement. I had built homes for nearly 5 decades. Real homes. Solid ones. Ones that stayed standing through tornado seasons and brutal Midwestern winters. I knew how to build things that lasted. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you were listening in the comments. Or at least I thought I did. It started with a phone call. Not just any call, the kind of call that scorches itself into your memory so fiercely it feels like a nightmare you never quite wake up from. My granddaughter, Lila, rang me around 8:30 in the evening. She never calls at that hour. She works long shifts at the diner and studies nursing during the day. If she calls past sundown, something is wrong. I picked up expecting she needed textbook money again, but what came through the speaker wasn't her usual breathless chatter. It was a scream. "Grandpa, listen. You need to listen. Grandma is at the Maple Shade Motor Lodge with some men. I just saw her walk into room 106. I stared at my phone. Then I stared at the woman asleep on the sofa beside me. "Lila," I said, calmly at first. "What on earth are you talking about? Your grandmother is right here, sleeping like a stone." "No, she's not," she insisted, voice crackling with panic. "I swear, Grandpa, I'm looking at her. It is her. The silver coat, the brooch, the one you gave her for your ruby anniversary." She walked right in with 3 guys in suits. "Grandpa, they looked wrong." I told her to send me a picture. When a photo came through, my blood turned colder than a January morning on the lake. It showed a woman crossing a dim motel parking lot under a buzzing neon sign. The image was grainy, but even with bad lighting and cheap camera quality, I knew what I was looking at, or rather, I thought I did. Same height, same posture, same soft silver hair that my wife, Carol, kept in a tidy, chin-length bob. But it wasn't the hair that stopped my heart mid-beat. It was the coat. That coat, a deep plum wool with a hand-stitched lily pattern on the collar, was one of a kind. I had ordered it from a small atelier in Florence for our 40th anniversary. Carol wore it only on special days, and she wasn't wearing it tonight, or so I believed, because when I turned toward the front door, the wooden peg on the coat rack, where that plum coat always hung, was empty. I looked back at Carol. Her chest rose and fell, slow and heavy, as if she were swimming through thick fog in her sleep. I touched her cheek. Clammy. Too cool. Too still. Something was wrong. "Carol," I whispered, shaking her gently. She barely stirred. Normally, the sound of a spoon dropping in the kitchen would wake her. Tonight, she was out cold. Unnaturally so. A shiver ran through me. Lila's photo was still glowing on my phone screen. The woman in that coat, stepping into the motel room, while 3 nervous-looking men followed behind her like shadows that didn't belong to her. It didn't make sense. Nothing made sense. I stood up, my knees cracking like old floorboards, and walked down the hallway to our bedroom. Our family pictures lined the walls. Our son's graduation, Lila's first day of kindergarten, Carol and me standing in front of the lighthouse on our 30th anniversary. They suddenly looked like photographs of strangers who had lived in simpler times. I reached the closet, slid aside the door, and stared at the empty space where Carol's coat should have been. Something icy and jagged pressed against the back of my throat. I swallowed it down. That coat was gone. Someone or something had taken it. And if the woman in that motel room wasn't Carol, then someone was pretending to be my wife. My phone buzzed again. A second message from Lila. "Grandpa, they just shut the door. What should I do?" I didn't know who those men were. I didn't know why someone would impersonate my wife or why they chose that night, that motel, that coat. But I knew one truth as clearly as I knew the weight of a hammer in my hand. Something terrible had already begun, and I was already behind. Before anything else, I had to keep Lila safe. I typed back, "Stay in your car. Lock your doors. Don't move. I'm coming." Then I went to the study, opened my safe, and reached for the one thing I never hoped I'd need again, my old .38 special revolver. Cold, heavy, silent, just like the fear settling in my chest. I tucked it beneath my shirt and looked at Carol one last time before leaving. "I'll be back, sweetheart," I whispered, "and I'm going to get to the bottom of this." Then I stepped into the night. not knowing that the next 24 hours would tear the floorboards right out from under my life. My old pickup may not be much to look at, but when the engine fires up after all these years, it still growls like a loyal dog that knows when danger is near. I slammed the door, turned out of the driveway, and headed for the Maple Shade Motor Lodge. I kept the headlights on low. The road stretched ahead like a ribbon of shadow and faded yellow lines. The night felt wrong. Not stormy, not loud, just wrong. Like the air was listening. The Maple Shade sat off Old Highway 24, tucked between a shuttered gas station and a field of overgrown weeds that used to be a pumpkin patch. A place folks only stop at when they have run out of places to go. When I pulled in, I spotted Lila's compact sedan parked near the far end of the lot, tucked under a flickering street lamp. She was hunched behind the wheel, phone in her hand, eyes darting between the motel door and her rearview mirror. I parked my truck 2 rows back, where the shadows swallowed the metal hole. I got out, feeling the weight of the revolver pressing against my spine like a cold reminder of who I had once been, a man who handled crisis by doing, not panicking. I tapped lightly on Lila's passenger window. She jumped so hard the whole car shook before unlocking the door. "Grandpa," she hissed. I swear it was her. I swear it. I climbed in beside her. Her hands were trembling on the steering wheel, knuckles pale as moonlight. "Tell me everything," I said, keeping my voice steady calm, the kind of calm you use when the roof starts bowing under hurricane winds. She took a breath. "I just finished a delivery," she said. I was heading out when I saw her, or the woman who looked exactly like her, walking toward room 106. 3 men were with her. They looked not like guests. They kept looking around like they thought someone was watching. "What do they look like?" I asked. "They were wearing cheap suits," she said, "the kind that shine weird under fluorescent lights. They carried briefcases, like salesmen or lawyers, but off." She swallowed. "And Grandpa the coat. It was Grandma's." I nodded slowly. The coat had been taken. Carol had been drugged. Someone needed her likeness, and they needed it tonight. "Good job staying put," I told her. "You did exactly what you should have done." She bit her lip. "Are we calling the police?" "Not yet." Her eyes widened. "Why not?" "Because if we call now, those men could scatter in 5 seconds flat," I said. "And whoever planned this, they won't make the same mistake twice." She understood. She always did. We sat in that silence, a tense, vibrating stillness. The only sounds were distant highway hum and the low buzz of the neon motel sign, sputtering like it was trying to breathe. After several agonizing minutes, the door to room 106 cracked open. Yellow light spilled out onto the concrete walkway. "Here we go," I whispered. 3 men stepped out first, exactly the kind Lila described. Suits too shiny, shoes too clean for this part of town. They moved with a hurried energy, like men who were doing something legal on paper and criminal in spirit. Then she stepped out, the woman in Carol's coat. Even standing across the lot in the dim glow of failing bulbs, my breath hitched. The height, the hair, the way she held the coat closed with one hand, it was uncanny. Like someone had taken my wife and printed a duplicate with a slight blur around the edges. But I knew it wasn't her. I knew because the woman walked too fast, too lightly. Carol hadn't moved like that since her knee surgery 5 years back. "Who is she?" Lila whispered. "We're about to find out." The woman hurried toward a dark navy SUV parked under an oak tree whose branches dangled like fingers. The headlights blinked once, unlocking. She opened the passenger door and slid inside. The dome light flared, and I saw him, the driver. His profile was only visible for a second, but that second was enough. It was my son, Andrew. When I say my heart cracked, I don't mean in some poetic way. I mean I felt an actual, physical pain in my chest, a pain sharp enough to make me grip the door handle. He leaned toward the woman and whispered something urgent. She reached up, grabbed the silver hair on her head, and pulled. The wig came off in a single smooth motion. Underneath was dark hair, tied messily at the nape of her neck. She flicked it out of her face and laughed, a cold, careless sound that seemed to echo across the empty lot. I recognized her. Marissa, Andrew's assistant, an aspiring actress who had once confided to Lila that she would do anything to get noticed. She was wearing my wife's coat. She was impersonating Carol. and my son was sitting beside her, helping her do it. The SUV's taillights glowed red as Andrew shifted into gear. The black sedan carrying the three suited men pulled out behind him. A coordinated exit. A caravan of fraud. "Start the car, Lila," I said. She stared at me. "Grandpa, you said dash." "I know what I said. Plans change. We follow them, but not too close." She turned the key. The engine hummed reluctantly, like it didn't want to be part of this. We rolled out of the lot one row behind the sedan, keeping two cars between us. Andrew drove like he always did when he was hiding something, smooth, overly cautious, never crossing the speed limit by even a hair. He turned onto the county road, heading away from town. "Grandpa," Lila said, her voice wavering, "why would Dad do this? What is he doing?" I looked out the window at the dark fields sliding by us. "I don't know yet," I said, "but we're going to find out." And the truth, whatever it was, would cut deeper than anything I'd imagined up to that point. But I wasn't ready to accept that yet. We followed the convoy deeper into the industrial outskirts where closed factories slept like metal skeletons and the wind carried the scent of rust and old smoke. They pulled into a lit-up storefront with a flickering sign that read, "All-night notary and signing services." My stomach tightened. They needed Carol's identity for something legal, but not lawful. "Stay put," I told Lila again, my voice as firm as steel. "If anyone comes near you, you drive. Don't wait for me." She nodded, tears shining at the corners of her eyes. I stepped out of the car and moved toward the building, keeping low, hiding behind a row of abandoned shopping carts. When I reached a side window, I peered through the crooked blinds, and what I saw inside made my blood run colder than anything that came before. Andrew, Marissa, three men in suits, a notary with a stamp, a stack of documents thick as a brick, and Marissa signing my wife's name over and over in Carol's shaky cursive. That was when I understood. They weren't stealing her coat. They were stealing her life. And that was only the beginning. The blinds rattled faintly with the draft from the air conditioner inside the notary shop, but no one in that room seemed to notice. Everyone was too busy orchestrating the theft of my wife's entire existence. I crouched lower, leaning against the cracked stucco wall of the building, trying to steady my breathing. The cold night air seeped through the thin fabric of my jacket, but my palms were hot and damp. Rage does that. Burns from the inside, even when the world around you freezes. Inside, Marissa dipped the pen again, exaggerating Carol's looping cursive. Her movements were practiced, too practiced. She must have rehearsed this for weeks, maybe months. She even tilted her head the way Carol did when her vision blurred from my strain. Andrew stood behind her with crossed arms, tapping one finger against his elbow. A small, impatient rhythm. I recognized it instantly. He did that as a kid whenever he lied. My son had always been brilliant, gifted even. By the time he turned 12, he could fix appliances better than I could. By 16, he had memorized every financial book he could get from the library. But brilliance cuts two ways. It can carve a future or carve a person open. Watching him now, I felt that blade turn against me. The notary, a round-shouldered man with deep-set eyes and a coffee-stained shirt, slid papers across the counter toward Marissa. "Next page," he said, voice flat and bored. "You sign there and there. And your husband initial at the bottom." "Right," Marissa replied, using Carol's soft, airy voice. A mockery. My stomach twisted. Andrew stepped forward, scribbled initials beside the printed spouse line, and cleared his throat. "How much longer?" he asked. The notary shrugged. "Couple more signatures. Property transfers take time." Property transfers. My vision pulsed. They were transferring something in Carol's name. Something significant enough to require multiple signatures, witnesses, and a late-night notary willing to skip questions. I strained to see the top of the document, angling my line of sight between the blinds. At first, all I could make out were blurred lines and blocks of text, but then Marissa slid one sheet closer to the edge of the counter, and the title peeked through. Durable power of attorney, financial authority. My jaw clenched. They weren't just stealing Carol's identity. They were taking control of her assets, everything with her name on it. The notary flipped another page. And this one is the authorization for disbursement from the retirement account, he said casually. My chest tightened painfully. Carol's retirement account was her lifeline. The one thing she guarded more fiercely than family heirlooms or old love letters. We had built that account for decades, brick by brick, paycheck by paycheck. Without it, she had nothing, and Andrew was draining it. My son, my own flesh and blood. I felt sick. Inside the shop, the three suited men exchanged nervous glances. One leaned toward Andrew. You said the old man wouldn't interfere, he whispered. You're sure? Andrew's eyes flashed. He won't. He never does. I felt something inside me crack then, something older than anger, older than pride. A quiet ache, the kind a father feels when realizing his child sees him not as a man, but as an obstacle. The ache turned to resolve. I couldn't watch this unfold like some powerless bystander. I rose slowly from my crouch, spine stiff but determined. Years of hauling lumber and wrestling beams in a place had carved endurance in my bones, and that strength carried me to the front door. But before I could step inside, I heard tires rolling across gravel. A car pulling into the parking lot. My heart jolted. Lila. She must have panicked after losing sight of me. The headlights swept over the storefront before she parked crookedly beside the dumpsters. I whispered a curse under my breath and hurried toward her. She climbed out, her face pale under the street lamp. Grandpa, I couldn't just sit there, she said, voice trembling. I needed to know what's going on. It's not safe here, I told her firmly. Get back in the car, Dash. No, she whispered. I need to hear it from you. What's Dad doing? Why is Marissa pretending to be Grandma? I exhaled slowly. I think they're forging documents to gain control of your grandmother's finances, I said. And from the looks of it, they're close to finishing. Her hand flew to her mouth. No, he wouldn't, Grandpa. Dad wouldn't do that. I looked at her with a heaviness I couldn't hide. He already is. A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it quickly, shaking her head as if she could erase reality with enough denial. Before I could say more, the shop door opened. Andrew stepped out. He froze when he saw me. His eyes widened, not with guilt, but with frustration. The kind of man has when a wrench falls and dents his new truck. Dad, he said, tone flat, controlled. What are you doing here? I took a step forward. Ask yourself that question, I said. Because whatever this is ends tonight. Marissa appeared behind him, the plum coat draped over her arm like a trophy she'd earned. Up close, she looked less like Carol and more like a cheap imitation wearing a stolen life. Oh, great, she muttered under her breath. The three suited men followed her, each clutching a black briefcase like they contained something fragile and dangerous. Dad, Andrew said again, lowering his voice, you need to go home. This doesn't involve you. Doesn't involve me? I repeated softly. You're stealing from your own mother. He winced barely, but I saw it. It's complicated, he said. No, it's not, I replied. You drugged your mother, took her coat, hired someone to impersonate her, forge her signature, and now you're about to drain her accounts. That isn't complicated. That's betrayal. Marissa scoffed. Oh, please. Nobody drugged anyone, Dash. I cut her off with a glare sharp enough to slice. Do not lie to me, I said, voice low. I know the signs. Carol was unconscious. Unnaturally so. Andrew's jaw tightened. Dad, he said through clenched teeth, you don't understand. If I don't do this, I'm finished. They'll dash. He stopped himself. The suited men stiffened. They'll what? I demanded. He looked away, breath shallow, eyes glistening with fear he was trying desperately to mask. And that was when I realized something critical. My son wasn't just stealing. He was being coerced. I felt my heartbeat change tempo. Andrew, I said gently, tell me what's going on. But before he could answer, one of the suited men stepped between us. That's enough, the man said. We're done here. He reached into his jacket. Not for a gun, but for a burner phone. He tapped a single button. Behind him, Marissa panicked. Wait, we're not supposed to call him yet, Dash. The man ignored her. A voice answered on speaker. Smooth, cold, familiar. Is it done? Andrew swallowed hard. But it wasn't Andrew who spoke. The suited man raised the phone slightly and said a name I hadn't heard in years. Mr. Langford, we have a problem. When I heard that name, everything inside me froze. Because Mr. Langford wasn't just anyone. He was the man who ruined my son's life once before. And now he was back. I drove straight from the notary shop back into town without stopping. The truck's heater coughed warm air at my knees, but did nothing for the cold that had settled in my bones. The image of my son smiling in a car with my wife's coat burned across my vision. It would not leave me. The bank was open, which in small towns is a mercy and a curse. I walked in like a man who had built half the town, which I had, and the security guard nodded without needing a name. When you've poured concrete for somebody's front stoop, they tend to remember you. Sam, the branch manager at the First Heritage Bank, recognized me before I said a word. Sam had been a teller when I first met him. He had a soft face and a better memory than his boss gave him credit for. He waved me into his office and closed the door gently behind us. "What's the trouble, Hal?" he asked, sliding a manila folder toward me. "I need everything you have on our accounts," I said. He looked at the folder and then at me with a gravity I hadn't seen on his face before. "We already put a temporary hold on any large disbursements last night after someone tried to withdraw $550,000 in cash from your joint savings." My jaw clenched so hard my molars buzzed. "Who requested it?" "A courier," Sam said. "A third-party pickup. The signature looked like yours, but the pressure and the slant were off. We flagged it and put it on hold to verify with you." I felt an odd, hollow gratitude at that small, bureaucratic prudence. "Good," I said. "Keep it that way." Sam hesitated, then passed another sheet across the desk. "There's more," he said. On the paper was a scanned document. I read it with a growing dread that felt almost physical. It was a title search notice. Someone had placed a lien on our house as collateral for a reverse mortgage with a private lender called Apex Capital Solutions. The amount was astronomical, $1,300,000. I slammed my hand on the desk. "A reverse mortgage," I said, the words ripping out of me. "On our house." Sam nodded. "It was filed electronically early this morning. At first glance, it looked legitimate. Notarized signature, proof of residency. The problem is the notarization. It lists a notary stamp I don't recognize, and the signature file we pulled is identical to a recent form they faxed in. We froze the deed request when we saw the account flags, but you need to know this. If they get the title, it could move very fast." My hand shook. We had poured our life into that house. Every plank, every nail carried the weight of years and memories. To lose it felt like someone trying to pry the earth from beneath my feet. "What about the power of attorney?" I croaked. Sam pushed a photocopy toward me. A generalized durable power of attorney was on file with the county clerk. The document bore our signatures. Not only that, it was notarized with the same notary name I'd seen in the notary shop file, Earl J. Marcus. The signature date was yesterday. "You have to be kidding me," I said. "I didn't sign anything yesterday. Carol didn't sign anything. She was asleep on the sofa when I left." Sam rubbed his face. "Legally, until the court rules otherwise, this is a document recognized by the system. It gives whoever holds it the right to act on your behalf." I could feel the air leave me like a slow leak. 1,000 practical thoughts and one ocean of rage washed through me. I thought of the motel photo, of the wig, of Marissa's practiced hand. I thought of Andrew's shaking fingers and the notary's bored eyes. They had built themselves a legal ladder, and they were about to climb out with everything we owned. "No one is taking anything," I said, my voice low and flat. "Not if I can help it." Sam leaned forward. "We can file a fraud alert and flag everything, but you need proof. The bank needs official evidence, police report, sworn affidavits, forensic signatures. Otherwise, the system moves faster than we do." I looked at Sam and then at the ceiling like I was pleading with the rafters. I didn't have days. I had hours. "You can slow them," he said softly. "We can refuse the title release, put holds on wire transfers. But if someone with a valid power of attorney walks in and insists, the bank may be obliged to treat it as valid unless a court order says otherwise." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. "Give me everything you can," I said. "Hold the accounts. Flag the deed. Call Apex Capital and put them on notice. Don't let anything move without me in the bank with 2 forms of ID. Sam nodded and began typing, his fingers moving faster than I'd seen in years. He set alerts, froze withdrawals, and sent urgent notes to headquarters. It was something. It was not what I needed, but it was something. When I left the bank, the day had that gray, clinical light it gets right before a storm. I drove home slowly, thinking in a focused, dangerous way. The notary shop, the motel, the forged signatures, they were all parts of a machine. Machines run on money, and money leaves tracks. I called Frank, my private investigator, from the truck. If anyone could find tracks, it was him. He answered on the second ring, his gravel voice like a blanket thrown over a bed that has been too long and used. Frank, I said, I need everything you've got on Andrew, transactions, meetings, who's been talking to, and pull anything on Apex Capital. If there's one thing I cannot stomach, it's being outmaneuvered on paper. You heard from Sam? He asked, already moving mentally. I got the surveillance audio from the motel. I pulled the registration on that Lexus. It's in your son's name. Also, Hal, you not go to like this. The loans, the transfers, they trail into crypto and offshore accounts. Your boy dug himself into a hole with people you do not want to owe. I didn't need Frank to tell me what I already suspected. The old gambling itch I'd seen in Andrew's eyes at card tables and in stock charts had become an avalanche. How much time do I have? I asked. Frank's laugh was ugly. If you're lucky, 48 hours. If you're not, less. 48 hours. The number flashed like a deadline marker. My chest tightened. 2 days to save a life's work felt like trying to pack a house into a shoebox. Okay, I said. Then we move in 2 directions at once. You keep pulling what you can. I'll play a different game. What game is that? Frank asked. I breathed out slow, steady. I'm going to give him what he thinks he wants, I said. But I'm going to make sure when he reaches for it, it snaps him tight and keeps him from walking away with the house. And I'm going to make sure the people who loan the money get paid something real, but not what they expect. Frank was quiet a beat. Then he said, You're up to your old tricks, Hal. I like it. Be careful. Always am, I said, and for once the words felt true. I drove back into the house and looked at Carol sleeping on the sofa. Her breath was shallow but steady. I sat down and took her hand. Her skin was cool. I kissed her brow. We're not losing this house, B, I whispered. Not to him. Not to anyone. Outside, the afternoon bled toward evening, and the clock I'd built in the workshop ticked like a metronome. The next move would have to be timed to the second. Before the sun dipped fully behind the maples, I knew what I had to do. Not what I wanted to do, what I had to. There's a particular kind of resolve that settles into a man my age. It isn't rage, and it isn't panic. Those are luxuries of youth. No. What filled me now was something colder, steadier, like a stone that had spent decades underwater and could not be moved by storms. That kind of stillness becomes a weapon when wielded right. I left Carol resting on the sofa and locked the door behind me. If Andrew or those Apex boys tried coming back to the house, I needed them to believe we were still blind. The truck shuddered when I turned the ignition, as if asking me whether I was sure about this. I was. I drove toward the industrial edge of town, where the buildings stood like hulking silhouettes against the fading sky. The address Frank had given me for Apex Capital Solutions sat at the end of a cul-de-sac where the asphalt cracked like old skin. The building wasn't much. A repurposed warehouse with fresh paint and expensive glass doors. A pair of trimmed hedges stood out front, too polished for a place with such predatory paperwork. The lobby inside was colder than winter church pews. Everything gleamed. The marble floors, the steel trim, even the receptionist's smile. She had that brittle, lacquered look of someone paid to pretend nothing surprised her. Good evening, she said. Welcome to Apex Capital Solutions. How may we assist you? I'm here to speak with someone regarding a lien placed on my home, I said. She tilted her head slightly. Your name, sir? Harold Mason. Her eyelids flickered at the name, just a fraction of a second. Enough to tell me everything. They already knew who I was. One moment, she said. She typed quickly, her perfectly painted nails clicking like beetle legs across the keyboard. Her expression smoothed into something neutral and too careful. Someone will be with you shortly, Mr. Mason. I sat in the waiting area, which was furnished with a single sofa, a coffee table with glossy brochures, and an air purifier humming like a distant wasp. The brochures all showed smiling retirees with captions promising financial freedom, security, trust, and other lies designed to lure desperate people. When the door to the back offices opened, I smelled the cologne before I saw the man wearing it. He was tall, handsome in that polished wolf sort of way, hair silvered at the temples. His suit looked like it cost more than my truck was worth. And yet his smile, thin as fishing wire, was the kind you find behind shark eyes. "Mr. Mason," he said, extending a hand I pretended not to see. "I'm Daniel Langford." Langford, hearing that name out loud, made something old and bitter stir inside me. This was the man who had once shepherded my son into a college investment club, the same club that later bled Andrew dry and shoved him into debts he couldn't claw his way out of. A mentor who taught financial literacy with one hand while picking pockets with the other. "I know who you are," I said. His grin didn't falter. "Then this will be an efficient conversation." He gestured toward his office, a dim, elegant room with paintings of ships battling storms. Subtle, but not subtle enough. I sat. He didn't. "I understand you have concerns about a reverse mortgage filed on your home," he said. "Let's not waste each other's time," I replied calmly. "You filed fraudulent documents after someone impersonated my wife and forged her signature." He arched one eyebrow. "We have no interest in forgery, Mr. Mason. We process documents that are legally presented to us. You know damn well those signatures were fake." He gave a thin laugh. "And you can prove that?" "Not yet, but soon." I leaned back, letting silence settle like snowfall. "I'm here," I said finally, "to understand what you want." He clasped his hands. "Simple. Repayment. Your son owes a considerable amount to parties who became impatient. He came to us for help. We merely provided him an avenue. A legal avenue. He stole my wife's identity." "No," Langford said smoothly. "He presented documentation authorizing him to act as her financial agent. If those documents were ill-obtained, that is a matter between you and him." The man's calmness was the worst part. He genuinely believed he was untouchable. "How much does he owe you?" I asked. "Directly?" Langford mused. "Very little." He paused. "But through intermediaries, more than you could satisfy in a reasonable time frame. Try me." He walked behind his desk and tapped a key. A number glowed on the screen. I didn't need to see it clearly to know it was big. "Your son," he said, "owes our partners over $2 million. $2 million. The room tilted. I steadied myself. No wonder Andrew was desperate enough to fake power of attorney. No wonder he was letting Marissa play dress up in my wife's coat. He was drowning, and instead of reaching for a rope, he was tying rocks to the rest of us. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice quieter now. "Not from you," Langford corrected gently. "From your wife. Her accounts, her assets, her property, all perfectly legal conduits for repayment." "No," I said. "Not happening." His smile vanished. "You cannot stop the system, Mr. Mason. The documents are filed. The bank holds will delay us, but not indefinitely." "Unless I prove fraud," I said. He took a slow breath. "Proving fraud takes time. Time you do not have." I looked at him, then really looked at him. He believed he had already won. Good. Men like Langford always underestimate older men who build their lives with their hands instead of screens. They think age means weakness. It doesn't. It means experience. I stood. "You'll hear from me," I said. Langford didn't try to stop me. He merely watched, cold and certain. But as I reached the door, he spoke again. "One more thing, Mr. Mason." I paused. "Your son," he said softly, "no longer acts entirely of his own will. He made promises, dangerous ones. If we do not recover what is owed, they will collect, and they will not care who gets caught in the debris." I turned slowly. "Who exactly is they?" He gave a soft, sympathetic smile that wasn't sympathy at all. "The kind of men," he said, "who don't knock twice." I left the office with the truth sitting heavy in my chest. Andrew wasn't just desperate. He was endangered. And if I didn't move fast, dangerously fast, both he and Carol would lose everything. Maybe even their lives. When I stepped back into the truck, my phone buzzed. A text from Frank. Found something big. Call me. Now. Frank never sent messages like that unless the floor was about to give way. I called him before the second vibration finished buzzing through my phone. He picked up immediately. Hal, he said, voice taut. You sitting down? No, I replied, but you're going to tell me anyway. I heard him exhale a long, steady breath, the kind men take before delivering hard truths. All right, he said. I pulled everything I could on Apex Capital and the entities behind them. Turns out Apex is just a shell, a decoy storefront for a private lending network called the Meridian Group. They've got offices in 4 states, but they operate globally. They specialize in high-risk, high-yield loans that traditional banks won't touch. I've seen those types before, I muttered. They don't lend money. They lease a noose. Exactly. And your son's been tangled with them longer than you think. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. How long? Almost 7 years. 7 years. The number hit me like a collapsing beam. 7 years of secrets. 7 years of debt. 7 years of my son drowning quietly while pretending he could swim. What did he borrow for? I asked. Frank hesitated. It started with investments, crypto startups, penny stocks, real estate flips. Then it escalated. He got in deep with a trading group Langford managed. When the group collapsed, Langford walked away clean, and the others didn't. Is that when Andrew went to Meridian? That's when they found him, Frank said grimly. And they don't let go. My stomach churned. I pulled the truck over near an abandoned mill, the metal skeleton towering above me like the ruins of a life that had also been stripped for parts. What else? I asked. Frank cleared his throat. This next part is worse. The forged power of attorney? It's part of a larger pattern. Meridian has used impersonators before, wigs, disguises, fake documents, the whole theater act. They target elderly assets because they liquidate fast and quiet. And Langford, well, he's not just a middleman. He's the architect. I closed my eyes, letting the cold reality settle. Langford wasn't a parasite. He was the hive. Frank continued. The 3 men you saw with Andrew? They're called acquisition facilitators. Basically glorified debt collectors, but with nicer shoes and worse morals. One of them, the tall one with the scar, his name is Victor Hale. Ex-military, known for persuading borrowers. The name triggered something inside me. I've seen him before, I said. At the motel. Yeah, and he's dangerous. But listen, Hal, I found a crack. My eyes snapped open. What kind of crack? The notary, Frank said. Earl J. Marcus. He's not licensed in this state. Not anymore. His commission expired 2 years ago. Every notarization he's stamped since then is invalid. Illegal. If we can get proof he stamped your forged documents, the whole power of attorney collapses. My pulse quickened. Where is he now? Address on file puts him at a mobile home park outside Ashwood. Lot number 37. And Hal? What? He's scared. I talked to a neighbor. Said Earl's been paranoid for months, muttering about people watching him, about documents he shouldn't have stamped. He'll talk if you get to him first. Finally, a weak point in the Meridian armor. I started the truck again, put it in gear. I'm heading there now. Frank's voice sharpened. Be careful. If Meridian gets wind you're trying to flip their notary, they'll move faster. And you're already up against the clock. How fast are we talking? By my estimate, Frank said, you've got maybe 12 hours before they try moving the funds through a shadow ledger. Once that happens, the money's gone. And once the title transfer finishes, reversing it could take months. 12 hours, I repeated softly, a number like a loaded gun. But there's something else, Frank added. I waited. The woman impersonating Carol, Marissa. She recently got a deposit from Meridian. A big one. $30,000. For impersonating my wife? I said. For impersonating her so well, Frank corrected. It's part of Meridian's method. They hire desperate actors who need cash, coach them on the target's gestures, handwriting, and clothing. They film them practicing signatures. A wave of nausea rolled through me. The thought of someone rehearsing my wife's mannerisms, studying her as if she were a role instead of a human being, made my blood boil in a way I hadn't felt since my construction days back when subcontractors tried to cut corners and risk workers' lives. Where's Marissa now? I asked. Her phone pinged near the old freight yard, probably meeting the facilitators. Fine, I said. She can wait. The notary comes first. I turned on a Highway 14, engine humming like an old beast revived with purpose. The sky above me was a deep violet, the color of bruised twilight. Most folks don't understand that darkness doesn't fall, it gathers. As I drove, I thought about Andrew. My boy. My bright, stubborn boy. Buried under $2 million of bad decisions. I used to think I knew him, the adult him. But I knew now that I had missed years. I had missed the descent. I had been watching him from the shore while he sank beneath the waterline, waving as if everything were fine. Maybe that was my fault, but fixing it was still my responsibility. Ashwood Mobile Estates sat at the edge of a valley, a crooked line of trailers patched with aluminum tape and hope. I followed the gravel road until I reached Lot 37. A string of dim lights flickered on the eaves of a pale, blue mobile home. A mailbox leaned sideways, hand-painted with the name Marcus. Earl's Place. I stepped out of the truck and scanned the area. Quiet. Too quiet. A curtain twitched. Then a voice, shaky, strained, came from inside. Who's there? Earl Marcus. I called. My name is Harold Mason. I need to talk to you about some notarized documents. Silence. Then the deadbolt clicked. Once. Twice. The door cracked open a hair. A gaunt face peered out, pale. Eyes ringed with exhaustion, stubble patchy on his jaw. He looked like a man who'd lost several fights in a row and was waiting for the next punch. You shouldn't be here, he whispered. And why not? Because they're coming, he said, trembling. They know I talked. My heart dropped. Talked to who? Earl swallowed. Someone from Meridian called. Said I handled something wrong. Said they were sending men to clarify obligations. Hal, you have to leave. No, I said. You're coming with me. Before he could answer, headlights flared at the far end of the trailer park. A dark SUV. Then another. My pulse kicked. Earl's eyes widened in terror. They found me. And just like that, the race for the truth shifted into a race for survival. The headlights at the far end of the trailer park swept across the gravel like search beams, hunting for anything that moved. Earl staggered backward into the doorway, eyes wide, breath coming fast. They're here, he whispered. God help me, they're really here. Earl, I said firmly, we're leaving. Now. I can't, he choked out. You don't understand, Dash. But I grabbed him by the elbow, not roughly, but with the certainty of a man who had hauled frightened workers out of collapsing scaffolding decades ago. There are some tones that come from pure instinct, born from storms and emergencies, and I let that instinct take over. You want to live? I said, then move. That did it. His knees wobbled, but he stepped out of the trailer. We made it halfway down the 3 wooden steps when the first SUV door slammed shut. The sound rang out across the park, sharp, deliberate, echoing against the metal trailers like a hammer on sheet steel. Earl froze. I didn't. I pulled him forward, guiding him quickly across the lot toward my truck. The gravel crunched under our boots in a rhythm that felt too loud, too revealing. Don't look back, I whispered. But he did. His breath hitched sharply. That's Hale, he said. I didn't have to ask which one. Victor Hale was the sort of man you recognize by posture alone, shoulders squared, head slightly lowered like he was always assessing a target. We need to go. Now, I said, practically shoving Earl ahead. He stumbled toward the passenger side door. I unlocked the truck with a soft click. Earl yanked the handle, scrambled inside like a man boarding a lifeboat on a sinking ship. I swung into the driver's seat just as Hale shouted, "Stop right there." I didn't. I floored the accelerator. The truck's tires spit gravel as we lurched forward. The rear end fishtailed, mud and grit spraying behind us. In the rearview mirror, I caught the flash of Hale's face, hard, angry, calculating. He wasn't running. He was walking, measured, controlled, like a man who knew this wasn't over. We reached the main road. I turned sharply, the tires squealing, and shot on a Highway 42. For several minutes, all I could hear was the pounding of my pulse and the rattling wheeze of Earl's breath. When we hit open road, I exhaled. All right, I said, steadying my voice. Talk. Earl wiped sweat from his brow, hands trembling so badly he nearly dropped them into his lap. "You don't know what you've done," he rasped. "No," I said. "You don't know what you've done. You notarized documents for a woman pretending to be my wife." He flinched at that. "Yes," he whispered. "I did. God forgive me." "Why?" His voice cracked. "Because Meridian owns me. They caught me in a scam 5 years ago, a signature mill operation. Said they'd make the charges disappear if I did small favors for them." "Small favors," I repeated, anger rising. "Like stealing houses from elderly people." "I thought it was harmless at first," he cried. "Identity verifications, residency checks. But then they started asking me to stamp things I knew were wrong. One signature, then 10, then whole packets. If I refused, they hinted they'd leak evidence that would put me in prison. And you thought going along would save you." He nodded miserably. "It was a mistake. And then your son came in." My hands tightened on the wheel. "Andrew," I said slowly. "He came to you." "Not at first," Earl said. "Langford brought him in, told me to notarize a loan packet. I assumed Andrew knew what he was doing. But when I saw his hands shaking, I realized he didn't understand who he was dealing with." A chill crawled up my spine. Earl continued. "He tried to back out, tried to renegotiate. Meridian doesn't renegotiate. They tightened the leash. And with each new loan, they demanded more collateral." "My wife," I said quietly. "Yes," Earl whispered. "Langford knew your finances, knew your house was paid off and valuable, knew your wife had retirement accounts worth hundreds of thousands. He said it was the fastest way to square the ledger. And the impersonator, he swallowed hard. They hired her. They coached her for weeks. I watched them rehearse her handwriting in the back office of an abandoned co-working space out on Route 19. She wasn't just wearing your wife's coat. She was mimicking her posture, her hesitations, even the way she held a pen. A nausea rolled through me, so strong I had to grip the wheel. "That coat," I murmured. "Why the coat?" "To convince any witnesses, in case of security cameras." The coat made her silhouette identical. He clenched his shaky hands. "I didn't know they were going to drug your wife." "I swear I didn't." I shot him a sharp look. "You knew they were capable of it." His silence was an admission. We drove several miles before Earl spoke again. "I want to help you," he said suddenly. "I want protection. If you can give me immunity, or at least a deal, I'll testify. I'll give you every name, every address, every signature I stamped. I'll give you everything. You'll give me everything regardless," I said, "because you don't have another option." Earl slumped in the seat, defeated. "But it won't matter," he whispered. "Not unless you stop the next phase." "What next phase?" "They're moving the funds tonight." My heart thudded. "Tonight?" "Yes. Sometime between midnight and dawn. Langford calls it the sweep. It's when Meridian launders all forged transactions through their shadow ledger. Once that happens, even federal agents can't untangle it." I felt the urgency rise in my chest, that familiar pressure I used to feel right before a storm ripped the roof off a half-built house. "Where's the sweep initiated?" I asked. Earl hesitated. Then, from a secure office in the old transit depot downtown. I blinked. "The abandoned depot? It isn't abandoned anymore," he whispered. "Meridian uses it as their midnight headquarters." I processed that quickly, mapping out the depot in my mind, the back entrances, the loading bays, the observation windows from my construction days. "And the documents?" I asked. "Everything gets scanned and uploaded there. The physical packets go into a vault room. If you get those packets, you destroy the legitimacy of the entire operation. And if they get them uploaded first, then everything is gone forever." I swallowed. Hard. Then I merged onto the freeway with a speed my truck hadn't seen in 20 years. "Earl," I said, "you're going to show me that depot." He nodded weakly. "Whatever it takes. And you're going to give your statement on record. Tonight." His breath trembled. "If they find me, Dash." I cut him off. "They won't. Not if we move faster than them." But even as I said it, headlights appeared behind us. Bright. Fast. Closing in. Earl turned, his voice a thin whisper. "That's them." And the distance between survival and disaster began shrinking by the second. The headlights behind us grew larger, swelling like a rising moon. Only this moon carried men who wanted Earl silenced, and my family erased from the books like we had never existed. I pressed the accelerator. The truck groaned but obeyed, climbing to a speed I hadn't pushed it to in decades. The night pressed against the windshield like a living thing, thick and close, as if the darkness itself were leaning inward to listen. The freeway stretched ahead in a ribbon of wavering headlights and asphalt, the sort of lonely corridor that made a man question the solidity of the world beyond the glass. Earl sat stiff beside me, shoulders hunched, eyes darting at shapes that weren't there. Every so often he wiped his hands on his pants, like anxiety leaked from his skin faster than he could hide it. He'd been quiet for several miles too, quiet for a man with this much danger warming his blood. When he finally spoke, it was soft enough that I almost missed it beneath the hum of the tires. "But it won't matter," he whispered. "Not unless you stop the next phase." The words curled into the cab like cold fog. Next phase. Meridian ran their operations like a chain reaction, small spark, bigger fire, inferno before you knew it. If Earl said there was another phase coming, then whatever I thought I'd uncovered was just the edge of a much deeper pit. My knuckles tightened on the steering wheel. What next phase? "They're moving the funds tonight." The whole truck seemed to lurch, though maybe that was just my pulse. I didn't know whether to curse or slam my fist into the dashboard, so I did neither. I forced myself to breathe. Once. Twice. My heart thudded. Tonight? Yes. Sometime between midnight and dawn. Langford calls it the sweep. It's when Meridian launders all forged transactions through their shadow ledger. Once that happens, even federal agents can't untangle it. There was no overstating the gravity of that. A shadow ledger meant digital laundering of every forged authorization, including the one with my wife's name. Meridian would scrub the records until nothing remained but numbers that looked legitimate on paper and untraceable in court. Every scam, they'd run reverse mortgages, stolen annuities, fraudulent power of attorney would vanish behind a clean wall of data. A storm roared in my chest. I had felt it before, standing on framing beams while dark clouds gathered like fists overhead, knowing the wind was about to rip the structure apart. That same primal warning surged now. I felt the urgency rise in my chest, that familiar pressure I used to feel right before a storm ripped the roof off a half-built house. "Where's this sweep initiated?" I asked. Earl hesitated. His eyes closed, as if saying the next words might sign his own death warrant. Then, from a secure office in the old transit depot downtown. I blinked. "The abandoned depot? It isn't abandoned anymore," he whispered. "Meridian uses it as their midnight headquarters." That place had been a gravestone of brick and steel ever since the city cut public transit funding 10 years back. But I'd worked construction in the freight yard next to it. I remembered the layout: narrow maintenance hallways, broken ticket windows, rusted catwalks suspended like old bones. There were more hiding spots than a rat could count. I processed that quickly, mapping out the depot in my mind, the back entrances, the loading bays, the observation windows from my construction days. "And the documents?" I asked. "Everything gets scanned and uploaded there. The physical packets go into a vault room. If you get those packets, you destroy the legitimacy of the entire operation. And if they get them uploaded first, then everything is gone forever." The words dropped into the space between us like a stone in deep water. Carol's face flickered across my mind, the way she pressed her fingers to her temples when the stress headaches came, the exhaustion buried beneath her eyes, the light that had dimmed over months of watching her life be sold out from under her by men who didn't even know her name. The idea of losing the last thread of evidence? Unacceptable. I swallowed. Hard. Then I merged onto the freeway with a speed my truck hadn't seen in 20 years. The old Ford shuddered in protest, but it held together barely. Earl clutched the door handle like we were hanging off the side of a cliff. "Earl," I said, "you're going to show me that depot." He nodded weakly. "Whatever it takes. And you're going to give your statement on record. Tonight." His breath trembled. "If they find me, Dash." I cut him off. "They won't. Not if we move faster than them." But even as I said it, headlights appeared behind us. Bright. Fast. Closing in. It was like watching a white-hot coin dropped into darkness, growing larger by the heartbeat. Whoever was behind us wasn't just tailing, they were hunting. Earl turned, his voice a thin whisper. That's them. And the distance between survival and disaster began shrinking by the second. Panic fluttered in Earl's throat like a trapped bird, but adrenaline sharpened my senses. The SUV behind us moved with predatory confidence. Every lane change crisp and deliberate. They weren't trying to hide anymore. They didn't need to. I pressed the accelerator harder. The truck coughed, then surged. The headlights behind us grew larger, swelling like a rising moon. Only this moon carried men who wanted Earl silenced, and my family erased from the books like we had never existed. I pressed the accelerator. The truck groaned but obeyed, climbing to a speed I hadn't pushed it to in decades. Take the next exit, Earl said, voice tight. The depot's 3 miles down the service road that runs behind the freight yard. I cut across the lane, the pursuing SUV following without hesitation. They weren't bothering with stealth anymore. They wanted us off the road. They wanted the loose end tied. The truck rattled dangerously as we hurtled down the off-ramp. Gravel pinged off the undercarriage. Earl braced himself, breath coming in short, sharp bursts. The SUV hit the ramp a second later, suspension absorbing the impact like it was nothing. We hit the service road, a narrow strip framed by skeletal trees and rusted fences. The old transit depot appeared ahead, a hulking brick structure with faded lettering and boarded windows. Only one thing about it wasn't abandoned: the single strip of light glowing from the office in the center of the building. The heartbeat of Meridian's midnight sweep. I veered around the back lot and braked hard behind a row of derelict buses, the truck skidding into the shadow between them. Out, I said. Move. Earl scrambled out, clutching his thin jacket around him like it was armor. I grabbed him by the collar and pulled him into the narrow gap between 2 buses just as the SUV thundered into the lot. Hale stepped out, calm, unhurried, a man who believed he had already won. His presence filled the lot like a physical force. Hale wasn't loud, wasn't reckless. He was the kind of man who handled problems the way a surgeon handled tumors, precisely, quietly, permanently. Earl, he called. End of the line. Earl shook violently beside me. I whispered, breathe. Follow me. We moved low, slipping into the depot through a broken side door. The metal groaned faintly as we pushed it open, but the SUV's engine masked the sound. Inside, darkness swallowed us whole. The air smelled of dust and machine oil and rotting wood. The only illumination came from flickering industrial lights along the ceiling, most too dim to offer any comfort. The corridor echoed with our footsteps and then with heavier ones behind us. Hale wasn't rushing. He didn't need to. He knew the layout. He knew he had nowhere to go but deeper into Meridian's territory. I pulled Earl into a storage room, just as Hale's silhouette passed the doorway. Earl's breath shook. They'll kill me. Not tonight, I said. Show me where the sweep happens. He pointed to a metal staircase at the far end of the hall. Up there, middle office. We crept out, stepping around debris, broken machinery, shattered glass. Every sound felt like a gunshot. Every shadow felt alive. Hale's footsteps faded for a moment, then reappeared, methodical, confident. He was sweeping the halls like a shepherd, rounding up lost sheep. We climbed quickly, my knees protesting each step. I kept one hand on Earl's collar, guiding him forward. Halfway up, a sudden clang echoed below. Hale had found a broken door we entered through. His pace quickened. At the top, we found the door slightly ajar. Inside, desks were cluttered with scanners, folders, laptops, and there in a steel bin sat the physical packets. Carol's forged power of attorney, the reverse mortgage, the retirement disbursement. All of it. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the whole stack. A voice behind me said, "Put those down." Langford. He stood in the doorway, pistol raised, expression smooth as whetstone. "You're too late, Mr. Mason. The uploads begin in minutes. Hand over the documents." "No," I said. Behind him, Hale appeared, but before he could step in, Earl shouted, "It was me. I'll testify. Everything. Just leave him alone." Hale turned toward the voice, and that second was all I needed. I hurled the steel bin into Langford's arm. The gun fired wild, sparks clipping the doorframe. Earl ducked. I tackled Langford, the two of us crashing into the desk, sending folders flying. The expanded fight begins here and continues with heavy detail per your chosen option. Langford recovered quicker than I liked. He slammed an elbow into my ribs, driving the breath from me. The gun clattered across the floor, skidding beneath a rolling chair. I reached for it, but Langford grabbed my jacket and dragged me backward. The desk edge dug into my spine. Pain shot through me like lightning. "You have no idea what you're interfering with," he hissed, spittle flecking his lips. "Oh, I've got some idea," I grunted, pushing off the desk, twisting free. He swung at me. I ducked, felt the air rush past my cheek. His fist struck the metal cabinet behind me with a resonant clang, and he winced, but only for a heartbeat. Hale lunged, but Earl, trembling and desperate, swung a metal scanner like a club, striking Hale square across the temple. The enforcer dropped to his knees. The scanner cracked on impact, pieces scattering across the floor. Earl stared at what he'd done, horrified but alive. Hale shook his head, trying to clear the haze, blood trickling from his temple. I grabbed the gun, stood, and leveled it at both of them. "It's over," I said. Langford sneered. "You think this stops anything?" "The system dash." "Already stopped," I said. I held up my phone, still recording. Everything. Every word. Every threat. Every admission. The police sirens wailed outside. Frank had followed the SUV and called it in. Langford's expression finally cracked. The officers swarmed the depot. Hale was cuffed. Langford was dragged out shouting legal jargon that meant nothing now. Earl was escorted to safety, trembling but alive. As dawn crept over the horizon, I called home. Carol answered groggy, confused but awake. "Al," she murmured, "where are you?" "Coming home," I said softly. "Everything's going to be all right." And for the first time in one very long night, I believed it.